Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Okay, there's been a motion by Maggie, seconded by Bruce to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item 1 is the Hy-Vee Incorporated liquor license permit applications for 200 and 202 10th Avenue Southeast in New Prague. You want to give us a little background, Mike?
Sure, Mayor, I'll take that one. What you have before you tonight are two liquor license applications from Andrew Schrader of Hy-Vee Incorporated. That we have two of those, one for the Hy-Vee Food Store at 200 10th Avenue Southeast, which would be a 3.2% off-sale malt liquor license. And then the second one is for Hy-Vee Wine and Spirits Store at 202 10th Avenue Southeast, which would be an off-sale intoxicating liquor license. The applicant is proposing that these liquor license operation businesses would be eligible to begin operating at the above addresses beginning on or after July 1 of 2021. And the licensing period would be from that point through March 31 of 2022 in accordance with the city's normal liquor licensing period. In accordance with City Code Section 110.16 on the issuance of licenses, that prior to the council approving an application for the issuance of a license, the council shall provide an opportunity for the public to comment both for or against the issuance of the licenses. The applicant has paid all necessary fees, provided proof of financial responsibility, certificate of insurance for general liability, workers' comp, and liquor liability insurance. All of the property taxes and utility bills for both of the properties are current at this time. Included in your packet is information from Police Chief Garais that he's conducted a background check on the applicant and is recommending that there are no disqualifiers preventing the applicant from being granted a license. So technically, everything is in order, subject to any public comment that you receive. We have with us tonight a representative of Hy-Vee, Mr. KJ Harnack, who's in the front row here. So when you open the public hearing, you can hear from him and then anybody else that might want to comment on the liquor licenses.
All right. I'll open the public hearing. Does anybody from the public want to speak? If you do, you just need to come up to the podium, state your name and address, and go from there.
Did you want to?
Sure. Anybody else have anything to say? Mayor Jurek, council members, I am KJ Harnack, 5848 Savannah Lane, Shoreview, Minnesota, 55126. Thank you very much for having me this evening. Looking very much forward to being part of this community. It's a great community. We were already kind of talking ahead of time. I actually do a once a month polka show at KCHK, so I'm very familiar with your community, big fan. Just to put everybody's minds at ease in selling intoxicating liquors, whether it's in the grocery store under our 3.2 license or under our full intoxicating off-sale license in the wine and spirits, we actually do employ technology. We do scan every single ID upon a transaction. We try very, very hard to maintain a high level of execution in that, making sure that the sale to minors does not happen. We do hold ourselves to a very high standards in that regard. Other than that, I'm just looking forward to being here and working with you fine folks.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Questions from the council?
I have none.
KJ, what is your, do you have a position or an office or at the,
So I actually supervise our wine and spirits operations in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Northeast Iowa. Upon this store opening, this would be my 30th location that I'll supervise in 3 states.
okay, you're not one of the applicants though?
No,
Okay.
Okay, any other comments for Hy-Vee? Seeing or hearing none, I would take a motion to close the public hearing. Move.
Second?
Rick made the motion, Maggie seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right. So now we have the approval and issuance of the 2 liquor licenses. We can take them separately, or we can approve both of them at once.
I make a motion to approve both licenses.
Second.
There's a motion by Maggie, seconded by Rick to approve. Any other discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
Police Chief, Jim. The attachment to the application wasn't included in the packet that was there, can you describe what was on that? Had to do with the violations.
Oh, with the, form that they fill out? They
Yes.
submit violations, a history of their violations.
Okay,
Theirs was in a PDF form, I believe, and a small print. They just list all of their stores that had any violations in the last few.
so none of those rose to any concern?
No, they were general violations. Most of them were either taken care of by the clerk. Well, I think they had one for both the tobacco and alcohol violations.
Okay,
But they were just fines paid for those violations, but usually only one, every few years at a location. So none of them appeared to be historically repetitive.
okay, nothing that would show a pattern or a practice then?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got you out of here before 11?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. You gotta come back at 12:30 and make a final report.
Okay, Highway 19 Main Street reconstruction project update.
Okay, well, Mayor, members of the city council, I'm assuming you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll start. Before you here tonight, for your consideration is the directing modification of existing contract, change orders 17 through 19. But before we get into that, want to just give you a quick update on the project. Obviously, we've been sending out notices on a regular basis, so maybe you're up to speed on that. But with a drought situation like we're having, it's actually helping significantly with the schedule. Things are going well. They, of course, have to make some adjustments occasionally depending on other circumstances that they run into. Yeah, you may have seen that the westbound lane between First Avenue East and Second Avenue West was completed today. They'll be doing some hand fill-in work here tomorrow, and then completing probably the parking lane here on Wednesday. The closure of First Avenue East intersection had been scheduled for this actually this week. That did get postponed until next week just due to some utility conflicts they're waiting to have moved. But basically the crossover traffic will be switched over to the Columbus Avenue intersection on a temporary gravel surface after this week, so beginning next week. And then the First Avenue East intersection will be closed and they'll begin the work on that roundabout, that first roundabout. Also this week, they'll be starting on some creating the what we call the flat work or the sidewalk work. Probably starting first down towards the 2nd Avenue West intersection down by Wells Fargo and starting to work their way east, getting ready to prep those areas and start placing concrete here, probably even yet this week or beginning of the next week. Lighting contract will be placing conduit and light bases, likely beginning this week as well. So, like I said, schedule-wise, things are going well. They are on schedule or even ahead of schedule, depending on what parts you look at. So, any questions on that part of the project before we get into the change orders?
Are you gonna address the possible shutdown?
Yep, that'll be the other
Okay.
item we'll
Sounds
hear
good.
real quick.
Go ahead.
So, why don't we jump in real quick to the change orders? So there's 3 change orders for your consideration, modification of the construction contract. While 2 of these are actually fairly significant in cost, they're relatively insignificant when it comes to the cities, from the city's perspective or impact on the city. Change order 17 and 18 kind of go together, and I'll actually point out change order 18 first because it kind of came before change order 17 in terms of kind of the order of things happened. Change order 18 was costs that were basically a result of doing some additional work or some rework that was done on the basically about the block-and-a-half stretch from like between like 2nd Avenue West and Central Avenue. Contractor was dealing with some very unstable soils. Contractor and MnDOT were not satisfied with the subgrade and that some additional work needed to happen. There's some things that were tried and then actually abandoned and then redone. And this is the cost that was the result of that. So this is change order 18 has been being covered entirely by the by MnDOT for that work and rework to stabilize that stretch of the roadway. So as a result of dealing with those unstable soils and seeing what we were seeing as a lot of the utility work was happening, a lot of unstable areas, a lot of variable soils, MnDOT took a step back and decided to essentially beef up the section that was designed. It was adding another 6 inches of sand layer as well as a geotextile fabric. And as a result of that, that ended up being what we have here on change order 17. As you can see, it was a significant increase in cost, basically a significant increase in the investment that MnDOT is making on the roadway and the roadbed. What they propose to do, again, adding sand and fabric is what we do on our local projects, and we're totally in support of what they had proposed to do there. There is a slight cost to the city. As a result of this, because of our cost participation policy, we have to cover a portion of the cost of the parking lane, as well as the one of the quadrants on both of the roundabouts. One of them didn't have a added cost that was equated to change order 17, but the other one did. So as a result of that, there is cost to the city for that increasing that section on change order 17. And I think I had that noted in the summary there. The impact on that one to the city for change order 17 was about $14,354 of that total amount of $293,000. So again, MnDOT covering a significant amount of that, and then Scott County has a share of it as well, again, because of the cost participation policy. Change order 19 is straightforward. That's one that you actually visited and dealt with and addressed last month, or at the last meeting, and that was the request to add that water service at Checkers Bar. And again, it was a cost that was covered 100% by the property owner, but we had to put it into a change order so the contractor could be compensated. So I guess with that, that's, I guess, all I have related to the change orders, unless you have some questions there. Again, before you, there is that resolution to modify the construction cost amount. Any questions on the change orders at this point?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Change order 17. Who made up the recipe for your soil anyway? Was it you guys? Was it everybody together that decided that they were going to put it down the way they did?
It was basically, that came from MnDOT. They do what they call material data report, and they specify the section that was designed. And that was basically what was put in the plans under the direction of their materials folks. I don't think they were really anticipating, you know, they did a number of soil borings, significant number of soil borings out here. And ironically, not all these locations, problem locations show up, which is not unusual when you talk about a street like this. Again, you think of how an area like that developed over the last 100 and some years. You know, it was a dirt road. Buildings were built, basements were dug, soils were tossed outside the buildings. Boardwalks were used back in the old days. Eventually, the road got paved. Utilities went in 1921. The road was paved and with concrete right on top of whatever was there in 1931. Sidewalks were put in at some point, and they were literally put on with whatever was there. So we get in there and we start doing significant digging, doing utility work, the sewer water, as well as the storm sewer, building a road bed that's significantly better than what was ever there before. And you start running into things that are causing problems and instability. So
I understand. I want to understand that, Scott, but Chris, what I'm asking is, did the contractor come in, put it down the way he wanted to, and then MnDOT came in and stopped the project? Is that how that worked, or what?
They no, well, MnDOT or the contractor was building it as they were directed, as the design, and then when MnDOT and the contractor were looking at how the soils were not being stabilizing, everybody kind of took a step back and decided that something else needed to be done. They tried some things that didn't work, and they chose to take another step back and basically revamp what was being done on that block. They were trying to avoid a bunch of rework, which ultimately is what they ended up having to do with some rework. So the direction came from MnDOT. The contractor has they basically are stuck with the design, and any changes need to be directed by the agency. And again, the roadway is a MnDOT road, and so they're the ones that were in charge of any direction or redirection that had to be done on that portion of the project.
The reason I'm asking is because, the residents of New Prague, we pay state taxes, county taxes, and city taxes, right? So we're basically paying for all of these people. I mean, even if the $726,000 is being paid by MnDOT, it's still coming out of the pockets of the residents of New Prague. And now we're going to take the $14,354 $1,000 and directly from the residents of New Prague. And then I don't quite understand. And then Scott County's got a $5,305 they've got to pay. I mean, that's a lot of money for a mistake. So it would be nice to know who made the mistake.
Well, I wouldn't call it a mistake. 18 might have been we'll call it. 18 might be slightly what you might call a mistake, or it was a rework. But 17 was basically taking a step back and saying, you know what? Because of the variability on this, they chose to do what probably should have been done in the beginning, and it was they're investing more in the road bed, so the road construction is going to be better than it would have been otherwise. Again, if you look at the funding on this, again, yeah, we're all taxpayers, but this funding comes from the gas tax. There's federal and state gas tax in this. And even the city's share of that 14,354 that I talk about, 80% of that is coming from our federal share of this project. And the other 20% is coming out of our municipal state aid, which again is still state gas tax that's dedicated to the city. So it isn't directly impacting property taxes, so to speak. Again, these are funds that are available for transportation. And yeah, while 18 would have been nice to have been avoided, the work and rework that had to happen on that stretch of road, they also couldn't leave it as it was. Something had to be done. Whenever you're dealing with unexpected soils, there is going to be costs involved, and yeah, to make it right, something had to be done to do that.
I don't mean to get irritated with you, but we just pay, how much did we pay for the asbestos? I mean, didn't any of this stuff come into calculations during the original signing of the contract?
Again, these are soils that are uncovered during construction. And again, they investigated these pretty extensively back in during the early design phase of this. They chose the section that was decided on during the design. And again, it was only after discovering the variability that we're dealing with that they decided it made sense to go take a step back and increase that section. This is a good thing. I know that we're talking bigger dollars, but we're talking bigger dollars that we invested in the community, in this roadway that goes through the community to make a better road than it would have been otherwise.
I don't have a problem with 19, but I got a problem with 17 and 18. I'll let you guys handle it from here.
Okay.
Chris, I seem to remember a comment made before that, something about we're only going to be responsible for the cost for the extra foot on each side or something like that. But I notice here that the city is not obligated for any of these items here. So I'm just trying to remember what I'm trying to recall that was said earlier, because I understand MnDOT is covering the cost of the bulk of, if not all of this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So again, from basically the First Avenue West intersection all the way to the east end of the project, so all the way down to 7th Avenue Southeast, they are again increasing the section with additional sand and adding geotextile fabric, which they hadn't had before. And under our cost participation policy, we have to participate in a small share of the road bed and road construction. So yeah, it's like a foot of the parking lanes. And so we have to cover that share of the additional sand and the geotextile. And then we also have to cover 1/4 of the leg of the roundabouts. So both roundabouts. And that's where that 14,354 is our share of the cost based on the cost participation policy, the agreement that we signed back when we entered into this agreement with MnDOT.
okay, thank you. That's under the state/federal aid column then?
Yeah, that's right. So it doesn't come directly out of any we'll call it city general levy, or it's
Okay.
80% shares coming out of the federal grant that we're getting, and the other 20% that we have to cover by match comes out of our municipal state aid, which again is state gas tax money dedicated to the city.
Well, thank you. I was looking in that non-participating column, and I thought I'd see something there, but it won't be in those columns. It's in that state. Okay, thank you.
Correct. It will not.
Okay, any other questions?
Chris, I think there was one other question that Councilmember Seiler alluded to when he mentioned the asbestos removal. And yes, on all of our construction plans, it was noted that there would have to be asbestos removal in this project. However, what wasn't known, and it wasn't until the roadway was stripped away and we got down to take a look at it, that it was determined that the asbestos piping that was known to have existed was encased in concrete, a concrete enclosure. That was the piece that wasn't known at that time that we had to address. But yes, the asbestos was known, it was flagged in there. We just didn't know what the extent of it was because at the time the construction plans were put together, there were no specific plans that were made available at that time.
All right, if there's no other questions, I would take a motion to approve 21-0607, 21-01.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Bruce made the motion, Maggie seconded it. Any other discussion?
Requesting a roll call?
Sure. Jurek votes aye. Maggie, how do you?
Aye.
Bruce?
Aye.
Rick?
No.
Motion carries 3-1.
So the final item, I think we need to kind of go over regarding the project. This is more of a heads up, and Mike, you certainly can add to this too as well. Obviously, the state legislature has yet to pass a budget for the next biennium. And if that budget isn't approved by June 30th, the state will be going into a state shutdown, state government offices, et cetera. That will impact construction projects on MnDOT right away. While we think this is a remote possibility based on comments we're getting back and what we see in the news, we understand this is politics and we don't know what's going to happen. So probably by late this week, if nothing has been approved by the legislature, plans will start to at least go into effect of what's going to happen on June 30th. And by next week, again, if nothing's been approved by the legislature, I think you'll see projects going into shutdown mode. We don't know exactly what that means for this project and what will be allowed and not allowed. Based on a memo I received on Friday, I got have the understanding that any work that is non-participating work, which is basically city sewer and water, landscaping and some other things, that because we are in an agreement with MnDOT under the delegated contract process, that work can continue, but any work that would be inspected by MnDOT, which would be storm sewer construction, road bed construction, paving, curb, things like that, that work would cease. So if we get to that point, again, there's a good chance that we would at least be able to continue with work that is ready and available to the contractor that's local work, and anything that's state related would probably not be allowed to continue.
Are sidewalks?
Again, I think sidewalks would be considered state work as well.
Okay.
I can kind of update you on that. Today, the governor sent out letters to all these state park permit holders to expect a shutdown. And after watching the legislature get along today, I do not suspect that they'll get it worked out.
Okay.
So obviously we'll keep you informed as soon as we know more, or if we start to go into a possible shutdown mode. I'll be obviously the word that'll be sent out to everybody. So I'm a little bit more optimistic maybe than Rick, but it's politics, so I'll leave it at that.
I wasn't part of the process, but I had a citizen ask me about trees. Is there gonna be any trees on the main street? Or?
No, there are no trees proposed for under the Main Street project.
Okay.
Because all that work is in public right of way, and we wouldn't be adding trees within the public right of way.
Okay.
And I think when we discussed it in the the planning committee for the street project, that trees had been planted, they didn't do well. You know, they died off quickly and just created a site. So it was thought to best maybe just use some smaller shrubs and things of that nature.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, we'll move on.
Nope, that's it for me. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, we're gonna move on to item number 3, the request for conditional use permit. Ken?
Yep, and I have to present from back here, so I
Yes.
apologize.
No
Running the
problem.
camera and everything. So, the item we have tonight is a, item forwarded from the planning commission. This is conditional use permit C2 2021 for relocating a home to 303 Second Street Northwest. So at the May 26, 2021 Planning Commission meeting, we had a request to relocate a home to the current vacant lot at 303 Second Street Northwest. That's a RL 84 single-family zoning district. Ultimately, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a 4-0 vote, and there was some contingencies and additional information, which was included in your packet, but I'll go over that in a minute here. A little background on the home. So the home was built in 1929. It's currently located up in Prior Lake. It is 1,044 square feet on the main level of the home. There's another storage area on, we'll call it the almost second floor, but that is not considered livable area. So it's just storage. So the main floor is 1,044 square feet. Then there would be an equal sized foundation put underneath the home as well. But the basement is not planned to be finished at this point. So the main living space has 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen. Another thing to bring up, so with the new basement that has to be put in under the new home, if it's approved to be moved in, the home also must be brought up to current state building codes. So these are the codes that would be brought up to any new home that would have to be built to these codes. So fire, smoke detection, CO detection, clearances for stairways, egress, electrical, plumbing, all these have to be brought up to current state building code. In addition, some of the conditions added on the approval recommendation was adding a roof to the home, adding a small deck to the front and a larger deck to the rear, and then also remodeling the bathroom. There was a clearance issue with the stool as it currently is in the bathroom, so that's going to be remodeled. And then I also note that a detached garage or attached garage will not be constructed at this time, but there certainly would be room to add those at a later date. At the public hearing, we did have over an hour of public hearing comment received. The 3 property owners adjacent to the home, Nancy Zender, Trevor Schwartz, and Terry Crawford in particular, made the comments at the public hearing. Concerns included, but not completely limited to, and you guys had the minutes in your meeting packet from the last council meeting. But their concerns in summary included that the home did not fit into the neighborhood visually, would impact traffic and drainage in the alley, and would negatively impact their property values. In the packet, I included supplemental information that was requested by the Planning Commission with information from our city engineer and County Assessor Michael Thompson. Some of the information included in that packet of information, which specifically addresses the concerns brought up at the public hearing, was that the county assessor noted that the proposed home would not negatively or positively impact the property values of the neighboring homes. Noted that the value of the home as it sits in Prior Lake would be very similar if it was moved to New Prague. Really the big difference between New Prague and Prior Lake would be the value of the lot, which is existing in this case. Regarding the engineering concerns, so there was concern that adding this one additional home for traffic to the alley would cause traffic problems in the alley. And in talking to the city engineer, it was noted that one additional home in this alley was designed to handle all the lots to have traffic off it, will not cause a concern of traffic in the alley. Regarding parking spaces, there was concern that the proposed paved parking area from the proposed home would drain into the alley and cause further water to flow that way. City engineer noted that The majority of that parking area, basically everything south of the first 5 feet, which provides the approach to the alley, should drain to the south. And that is how the grading and drainage plan was revised, and we'll show that in a minute on the survey here. So we did address that in the conditions, and actually that was updated since the planning commission meeting. And then one final thing to note, in this, in regards to, there was one letter and one email that was included to you today, printed out on your spot in front of you, from Ms. Zender as well as Mr. Crawford. And I did want to note, both of their letters and emails brought up the fact that the Prior Lake EDA owns the home and that it's part of a redevelopment area. That information was not included previously because it's really not part of our review process regarding where the home came from or what the purpose of why the home is being removed. Our zoning ordinance looks at what the condition of the home is, what it will be when it's done, per our conditions, as far as what it will be brought up to new code. In this case, as I noted, new decks, new roof, remodeling the bathroom, and then all of the other aspects of the code being brought up for electrical, plumbing, et cetera. Prior Lake does have this as a redevelopment area, and in their definition of redevelopment area, and this is a state law term, it's considered a substandard home. Now, that does not mean it's dilapidated. It does not mean it's devalued. What it does mean is that in terms of TIF law for the state of Minnesota, which they are looking at possibly doing for this redevelopment area, they have to determine the home was substandard. And basically that means if you had to rebuild that home, new construction, if the things they have to bring them up to code, again, the plumbing, electrical, bathroom model, if that exceeds 15% of the new construction value, it's considered substandard. And that's what they determined with this home and one next door to that, up in this redevelopment area, which is right by Prior Lake City Hall. And that is what they determined to be the case of this home. So it's not that it's dilapidated or low value. It is simply that they were looking to meet that TIF definition and standard to do a redevelopment area. Another thing to point out is they do not have their redevelopment standard or redevelopment plan in place. This home cannot move until that plan is approved. So it could be 3 months, could be 6 months, could be a year until this home is ready to be moved. The home cannot be moved off that lot until they get their redevelopment plan done. Now, does that really affect the decision you're looking at here tonight? No. As far as zoning ordinance review, that is not part of the criteria. Again, we're looking at, does the appearance of the home cause a substantial diminishing of the value? Is it at great variance with the appearance of the other homes in the neighborhood, age of the home, size of the home, and value? And if you look in the packet, we have information from the county assessor that notes that while it is on the smaller side of the spectrum, as far as finished square footage, it is not a detriment to the neighborhood. And the statement direct from Michael Thompson, the county assessor, after it's placed here with the new value in the lot and the work that's being done to it, it will not be the least valued home on the block. It will obviously not be the highest, but it will fit in and it will not negatively or positively impact values in the neighborhood. So again, these are the things that our zoning ordinance calls for review. If you look in the overhead, we have the zoning. The lighter blue color is just the RL 84 single family residential. Directly to the south was property that historically has been zoned industrial. We have the street work staging area going on currently, but that's zoned medium density residential for future redevelopment. It's obviously still used industrially at this point. Going on to the next slide here. This was the original site plan that was submitted while we were waiting for a revised drainage plan for the site. And I just point that out because we have a 30 by 45 foot parking area in the north. Again, everything but the north 5 feet of that will drain to the south towards 2nd Street. The location of the home was adjusted based on the city engineer's review and commentary following the planning commission meeting. And this is the final certificate of survey. So this placement of the home provides for swale of drainage along the west side of the lot down to 2nd Street. Keeps all of the water on this lot itself. It does not cause runoff onto adjacent properties. And again, only that north 5 feet of the paved parking area that will drain back to the alley, but that we have to have that for a transition to that parking area. from the alley. Here's some photos of the area in question. So looking to the west streetscape along Second Street there, you have a home on the end that was built in 2006 that replaced a 1800s vintage home that had been burned down previously. One thing to point out, and we talked about at Planning Commission meeting, is that stick-built homes do not require conditional use permit and public hearings for these older neighborhoods. Some could argue that that home fits in less than the one that's proposed, some may not. But I do want to point out that even on this proposed vacant lot, a stick-built home could go in there. It could look nothing like any home on the block. It could be 500 square feet. There would be absolutely no input that anybody would be able to make. So I do want to keep that in mind of everybody here tonight. But regardless of that, again, the home does fit in size-wise, age-wise. These homes, again, vary from the 1950s, the next two homes, to the east of the one on the end. The home directly next door is 1880 vintage, and then directly to the west, the home on the corner that's currently being remodeled by Steve Skluzacek Construction, was built in the 19-teens. So this home in the middle, being 1929, would be set back approximately 40 feet from the road, very similar to the other two homes built in the 1950s. So it's a eclectic area for sure. This home would have similar roof line to the other two. Obviously, it is not a two-story home, but story, almost a story and a half, with that bonus storage room above there. So really isn't that huge variance with the look of the area in city staff's opinion, and also not in the Planning Commission's opinion either. So we're going to move on to a couple other homes. City staff did do a review. We require all review of moved-in homes to be completed prior to the staff report being written. Our building official, Chad Lunder, did walk through the home, inspected it to make sure that all the items that needed to be brought up to code will be. And that, again, is one of the conditions for approval. And again, one of those is adding a new roof. You will have to add, obviously, a deck that will fit the grading of the home for the placement on the front, where the front door is, and then one off the rear, which you can't see in the pictures, but there's a larger size deck in the rear that will be required to be placed on there as well. Some interior pictures of the home. Some portions of the home have been updated, as you can see, with some flooring. Yes, it is obviously not an opulent home. It is certainly functional. It certainly is not a substandard or dilapidated structure, as you can see. It certainly is livable, but again, we're requiring it to be brought up to current building codes. Next slide, you can see the kitchen, not 100% modern, but certainly functional and clean and nothing broken. And then the two bedrooms, well, one of the bedrooms, photo here on that side of the photo. This is the bathroom. The toilet had clearance issues with the wall for the current building code, so that was what one of the reasons the bathroom needed to be remodeled. So that will be corrected. Picture of another bedroom here. And then this is a layout of the home on that main floor. And then just a picture of that bonus room. That cannot be a bedroom. It does not have high enough ceilings. It's basically just a bonus storage room area. And then finally, oblique air photo view of the area, so that home would slot in, line up with these other two homes on two to the west and then the one directly to the west. So that's how far back it would be set back. So with that, staff and the Planning Commission do recommend approval of the conditional use permit with the resolution included in the packet. And if you have any other questions, again, hopefully you had time to read through the letters. I believe we do have a number of residents here tonight that may wish to speak to any of their comments or other issues regarding this matter. Again, as I said, we had over an hour of public hearing discussion at the Planning Commission meeting, so I can certainly stand for questions should you have any.
Okay, council, do you have any questions?
I've got a couple. How long will it take? Are you going to do, or are they going to do the footing right now and then wait the 3, 4, 6 months? Just leave all them footings sitting open, or?
We would not allow a open excavation, whether it be a basement, or just plain excavation be remaining to be left open. We do require a $5,000 escrow deposit to be held while the home is being built to make sure that all those things are cleaned up, but no, we would not let that sit for months on end by any means. It would have to be secured with fencing. But generally speaking, building permits are good for a 6-month time period. No, we wouldn't want an excavated hole remaining. That would be a danger to.
Yeah, that would be my concern,
Everybody.
because that lot right now is, it's, a lot of kids play on that lot, they're gonna miss it, that's why they're, I can see this place from my house, that's why I'm asking you a couple questions here. Once it's moved here, then you bring it up to tip standards, is that?
Yeah, once it's placed on the location, or some of it could be, need to be done prior, some of the plumbing work, some of the electrical work before it's placed foundation. I don't have the exact plan, but Mr. Seiler is the applicant, will be required to hire the appropriate licensed general contractors. Mr. Seiler would be acting as his own general, which is totally allowed by state law, but he does have to hire licensed professionals to do the work that he's subcontracting for, so.
And we have nothing in our ordinances to like size of bedrooms and all of that?
We do not have a minimum size, we just follow to state building code requirements for.
And state says as long as there's a closet in there and it's at a certain,
You don't even necessarily need a closet in there at this point for the, be a habitable sleeping area. But there are minimum square footages, I don't have those at my fingertips to give those to you, but these all meet the minimums as they're currently laid out in the plan. But as I noted, the bathroom, the stool did not meet the spacing for its location in proximity to a wall. Needed to be slid over a little bit, so that was one of the issues that led to that bathroom needing to be remodeled. But plumbing and electrical too, those, they all need to be brought up to new code.
and the, was it a 5-0 vote for the planning commission then?
It was 4-0 with the conditions that they wanted the information from Michael Thompson. And then to have the city engineer take a look at the grading and drainage for the area to make sure that it wouldn't cause additional runoff on adjacent properties.
And all three of the testifiers, Nancy, Trevor, and Terry, you answered all of their complaints. So if they say that there is one thing you're saying, we don't have to worry about that, is that right?
Say that again, Rick?
If they come in here and they say that they don't like this, this, and this, you've already addressed that in the open hearing, correct?
Well, I hope we have addressed those. I know, they obviously aren't happy with the proposed home being moved in. Again, we are under the purview of the zoning ordinance and the 3 main review points, which are, again, whether the structure is at variance with the established and inspected pattern of the development of the neighborhood, that it would destroy the overall appearance of the neighborhood. The extent of the variance, if any, from the proposed structure with the existing age, bulk, and architectural style and quality of construction. And then finally, the structure will not substantially diminish or impair property values with the neighborhood. Those are the 3 main review criteria that.
So our hands are tied. I mean, basically, we've got to be okay with this because they're not violating anything.
Well, that's up to you, but from staff's perspective and the planning commission's recommendation, we do believe they meet these items. We have these conditions. We can add additional conditions as long as there is a nexus or connection between the concern and the condition that you're making that is not extraneous beyond our finding or our criteria in the zoning ordinance. So, yeah, we're fairly limited in that. And that's why I mentioned, you don't have a ton of latitude to go beyond these criteria. And again, if it was a stick-built home, we wouldn't even be here, but these are the criteria that we're here to look at here tonight. And we don't want the value of the home to affect neighboring property values. That would be counterproductive to, just tax values in the city in general. But, you know, it's not a bad home. It will be brought up to new code. And is it exactly like every other home on the block? No, it's not, but none of the homes are identical on that block. It's kind of an eclectic mix, and, you know, it will not be substandard any longer. And again, it's substandard by the definition of Prior Lakes redevelopment area was that it was not meeting current building code. So we're not talking dilapidation. What's that?
It's a pretty tiny little house, so.
It's not a large house, but if you look at the chart of information from Michael Thompson, you know, he looked at the whole block in that area, and, you know, it's not would not be the smallest on the block. By any means, I think the low square footage on that block is 768 square feet. The average is 3,014 square feet. This one's 1,044. They finished the basement. We're looking at 2,088 square feet. which would
Thank you.
make it higher than the high. So I want to bring that to your attention as well.
Any other questions?
Hey, Ken, I was just trying to get clarification on the certificate of survey that you had there. It seemed like the house was further to the east than the previous picture where
Yes.
you had the orange diagram. So
Yep.
is that, the certificate of survey isn't the actual,
No, certificate of survey is what was revised after the planning commission meeting. Based on the concerns from the residents and the review by a city engineer, we took a look back at the existing grading and drainage for that home and on that lot. So it suggested to scoot it over to that east side of the lot, keep the water flowing down that west lot line so it doesn't go over onto that adjacent property to the west. Keeps the water going to Second, and they'll have to create a swale that'll go through there, but no water will shed off to the west.
okay, so it was moved to the east then.
It was moved to the east from that first meeting.
And then just to piggyback on Rick's question, just trying to remember my understanding of how this works. Conditional use permit, they would still need to get a building permit then?
Yeah, they have to get a full building permit review. Like I said, we've reviewed the home, our building official has. They still have to apply for a permit for the foundation, and then these corrective matters on, basically to bring it up to current new home construction.
So the decks that were spoken of, would they be in with this initial building permit?
They'll very likely be on the permit for the home and basement when that comes in.
Is there any anticipation that there be any variances requested or required?
No, because they've set the home back approximately 40 feet from the front property line, so the deck would need to meet a minimum of 30 feet. So it provides at least 10 feet for a deck on the front if they would choose to make it 10 feet on the front. And off the rear, they can come within 20 feet of their rear lot line, which they're nowhere near that at all.
They're just trying to understand the timing of it, because the time to get it done, it would, I guess, is a valid issue in my mind, but the conditional use permit expires in 2 years, is that correct?
There is no expiration on conditional use permits. There used to be a 1-year expiration on that, but that was found basically not to be legal to do that as long as conditions are being met or will be met. If they're not being violated, and if they haven't even started it, that means you can't violate them because they haven't done anything to not comply with them. It remains open until they're not violated, and you would hold a hearing to revoke the conditional use permit.
But then aren't
Yearly, huh?
aren't they conditional use required to be looked at annually?
We are required to look at them annually.
So they're subject to review and
Correct.
revocation annually?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the permits expire in a certain timeline, don't they?
Yeah, building permits are generally good for a period of 6 months. That's where if they stop working, it can be held open for 6 months. They have to do some work in there. A lot of times they'll do a little bit of work, here and there to keep that building permit open, but generally speaking, it's not an issue where we have to close them out. We have to do that occasionally, but, if you're starting a home, for example, there's things you'll be working on that will continue to push that new 6-month timeframe.
So that is the way the city would be able to help monitor the situation once a permit is granted.
Yep.
Which may occur next year, or we don't know when it might occur even.
Again, and with new home or moved-in home structures, we do require a $5,000 escrow deposit over and above our $1,500 landscaping escrow for a normal stick-built new home, and that is, again, to secure the foundation that's being built and to secure the site if the home is moved in and transitioned to be set on that foundation, so we don't have anything that's a hazard to kids or adults that might be walking by that want to interfere with the work that they're doing. So
Right,
it's kind
I'm
of an
just
extra layer of
trying to get to
protection.
the point of the purchase from the EDA, and that's not being done, there's no purchase agreement, blah, blah, blah.
No.
And that really won't be an issue, because the building permit won't be even applied for.
They won't even apply for it.
Until they have all those items, and you have to be able to have
Yeah.
the ability to build on, you have to have a legal right to do it, so that issue kind of goes away.
And that's why
once-
specifically we put in the condition in the report, and this even goes back to the planning commission, that this conditional use permit is only for this specific home that's currently located on that lot in Prior Lake. This is not for any other home being moved in, it's for this specific home. So if this deal falls through, the review is all for naught, but, we've received all of our fees, and, so we really have no skin off our back for going through this. If it ultimately doesn't happen, we're covered.
When you say all for naught, is this conditional use only applicable to this one particular house?
Yes,
So you can't replace it with another house or anything like that?
definitely not.
And did you say there was a drainage plan that was required?
That's part of the certificate of survey. They show if you see the proposed elevations on there, if I
So
can go back.
did the planning and zoning require a drainage plan and one was
You know,
accepted?
normally that's part of the building permit review, but the concerns that were brought up at the planning commission, we had the applicant and his surveyor add that information at this point, just to show that there will not be a drainage concern off the property or affecting neighboring property owners. Let me pop this back up on here. Hopefully it'll show up there. There we go. Let me zoom in a little bit. So this is what we require for all new home construction, or in this case, for a moved-in home. You can see the surveyor is required to put proposed elevation of the home, basically the elevation of all the grade around the home. And then they put these grading lines for flow of water, overland water, on the plan. And what we were trying to assure the neighboring property owners, and again, this is what we require before we issue permits, is that the water is flowing where it needs to flow. And this is, you know, again, from an 1880 era plat. We don't have a grading plan to refer to. That's why we referred it to the city engineer, who reviewed and said everything flows directly to Second Street. They'll need to provide swales, keep that water flowing directly towards Second. And, you know, that's as much as we can ask for that. Now, I know one of the letters that was submitted provided concerns of drainage from the alley. This will not be adding overland drainage to the alley, other than that 5-foot strip for the transition back to the alley, which is necessary just to get access to the parking area. But this water will be kept on this site and flow directly to Second. That's just the.
Won't it actually reduce the potential of water going to the alley?
It potentially could. The majority of it flows overland now towards the south, but this will, I guess you could make that argument, yeah, with the swales, that it will keep it even more directed.
And then will the city inspector inspect the drainage?
Yes,
the swells and whatnot?
Yes, and we require a as-built grading before we do any final certificate of occupancy, just like we would with any other new home, to make sure that their plan was constructed as designed and that there's not any negative drainage impacts to neighboring properties, so.
Okay, thank you.
Once, let's say the house is moved and a building permit is pulled, will that building permit also include the plumbing and the electrical inspection and inspection of the bathroom? And in the one case I can think of is that all of that is done prior to the house moving. So then presumably the city of Prior Lake would do that inspection. But moving a
it'll be
house, okay, all right, because I'm thinking moving a house creates a lot of movement, and so it would need to be inspected for.
And even if any work was done prior to it moving, you know, when we do the plumbing inspections, we do basically make sure they hold pressure. And that proves that they won't leak, for example. For the electrical, the city of New Prague does not have an electrical inspection that's done by the state of Minnesota. So that will obviously be done at certain stages throughout. You know, you get the meter hooked up, and then they'll have certain areas that'll have to be opened up to make sure, you know, for the electrical panel and breakers, that type of thing, that'll be looked at by the state electrical inspector. And they'll have portions, depending on, you know, if bathrooms being remodeled, portions of that they'll look at when walls are opened up, and then they obviously have a final as well. And we work hand in hand with the electrical inspector to make sure that certain parts of the project aren't done before they're inspected and closed out, so that we can then continue the remainder of the inspections through to final completion. We look for their tag for the electrical inspector, make sure that they've been there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions of the council? Otherwise, if anybody wants to address the council, you need to come up to the podium, state your name and address. If you want to add anything new, just remember we read the stuff from the planning and zoning, so we're well aware of the discussion, so.
It might make you feel better if you come up and talk.
I'll go first. My name is Trevor Schwartz. I live at 307 2nd Street Northwest in New Prague, 56071. I guess I'll just give the real brief synopsis. You guys, again, I've already read that.
Yep.
My biggest concerns is that it's 20% less than the average for square footage, and that's, obviously, there is a basement, but they've said in their plans that they will not be finishing the basement. And then when the assessor looks at all the homes in the area, one thing he did not look at is garages. That doesn't get taken into effect. So I don't really feel like the assessment that was done by the county is really a fair market value. It's, to me, you have to look at the value you can get for a home, not, hey, we're gonna pick and choose these parts, not the property, just the structure. And I think my biggest dilemma with it is that the part that it doesn't fit into with our neighborhood would be that it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. It's not necessarily family conducive. And my concern being right next door is it's gonna be one of the lowest selling homes in New Prague. It's going to be almost an invitation for transient people. I have kids, things like that. Obviously, if this was being built new, I wouldn't have any objections because the value would be there if it was built new. But you're taking a house that at least is up for consideration for being run down, or I don't know exact terminology, not dilapidated, but at least they're considering some funding for that. So try to put yourself in my shoes and say, hey, you're living here. They're trying to basically come in with the bare minimum of a house and move it right next door to you, and then say it's not going to improve or affect your property values. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Trevor.
Ken, do we have any rental property caps in our city?
We do not. We currently have a rental registration program,
Right.
which monitors the number and location of them throughout the city and then tracks the landlord and management of those in case we have any issues. And as the council knows, Dwayne, you may not know this, you weren't on the council at the time, but right up to COVID hitting last March, we were this close to starting a task force for having a group of citizens look at rental property and having possibly a rental inspection code in the city, and we really do need to pick that back up if that's a priority of the council, but that was put on hold due to COVID and when we weren't meeting in person. So I would still support that from a staff perspective to inspect and monitor rental properties through that program if we can get that in place, but we do not have that currently.
Well, I know it's off topic, but I think I would like to explore the possibility of a rental cap, if that is possible for a city to do. I know that I lived in a townhome association a number of years ago, and we were allowed to cap the rental property at 5%. And that was just because of HUD considerations for people wanting to purchase the homes. So I think it's just worthwhile exploring with other communities around us, because I do know, at least in my neighborhood, there is some rental property that doesn't always seem to get the pride of ownership.
Anybody else?
Yes, my name is Terry Crawford, 306 3rd Street Northwest here in New Prague. I was born and raised on the street where we're gonna put this house. And I built a home across the alley from where this is. And I am adamantly against putting this building on this lot. I have driven up and down 2nd Street several times, looking at the buildings that face that street on both sides. And this home will be the ugliest structure on the street. It is an ugly building. It has no architectural design. It is a box. And for someone to say that it is not gonna devalue our property, I'd like to have a realtor come in here and go up and down the street and which is gonna be the hardest property to sell, and it's gonna be that one. You know, they're gonna move this property in here, they're gonna dump it on the lot, they're gonna sell it, and they're gonna walk away and they don't care. We have to live with that house for a long time. And it is an ugly structure. Now, they're gonna put a small deck in the front and a larger deck in the back. What's a small deck? I mean, a 5x6 step coming up to a door? We have no idea what they're gonna put there. It's just, one of the conditions, they said they were gonna put a new roof. Well, what is a roof? Are they gonna tear the entire roof off, or are they just gonna reshingle it? There's too many things here that really bother me about bringing this house in. And I think, granted, we meet all the requirements, and personally, I was one of the ones that wrote the letter about the TIF financing and all this. I'm looking for anything I can to stop this. Because personally, I think this is a blight on the street. And apparently, there's nothing we can do to stop it. Aesthetically, this is an ugly structure. And, you know, every one of you stop and think, would you want this brought in and set next to your home? It'd be a fine building to move to a remote lake someplace as a hunting and fishing cabin. Wonderful for that. But to bring into an area like this, I just can't see it. And granted, it meets all the rules of a conditional use permit, but it does not meet my rules about what a house has to look like in my neighborhood. It's just plain an ugly building. And, you know, I'm sorry, I hate to say that about someone trying to, you know, make a living off putting a building in there, but it just does not fit our area. And I think our neighborhood has been, other things considered, we've had to look at that construction project in front of our homes for the last 3 years. Today, we're listening to concrete crushers making gravel and fill for the street project. We know it's saving money for everyone involved by having that site there. And that's fine, we'll put up with it. We've also put up with, I think it's 3rd Avenue. It is the only unpaved street in the city of New Prague.
It's a private street, though.
A private street?
Yeah.
No, it's public.
Oh,
It's public.
Isn't all of it? Oh, I thought some of it was private. Okay. I'm staying corrected.
No, and we've battled that street for, like I say, I grew up facing 2nd Street, and now I'm facing the alley off 2nd Street. But we've got that dusty old street we look at year in and year out, and we keep telling them, well, we can't because it's on the wrong place. Well, I believe the city owns that entire block now. Well, then, city, give them an easement so they can build that damn street. I mean, pardon my French, but it's just, you get frustrated after fighting these projects year after year after year and just saying, well, there's nothing we can do about it. And that's what we're hearing now. This house meets all the conditional use requirements. Maybe we should change that. You know, maybe it's time to look at how we do a conditional use permit. Maybe a home should be aesthetically pleasing or should aesthetically meet the standards. Like say, drive up and down 2nd Street. You won't see a single home that looks anything like this building. I mean, I'm sorry, it is an ugly structure. So again, I'm just stating I am adamantly against seeing this building go in. Hopefully, you know, if we have to let it, hopefully it all works out fine, but if it doesn't, you will hear from me because I am against it. Thank you for listening to me.
Thanks, Terry. And I think I've asked you this already, Ken. Is there any legal precautions that could be taken against us for saying no? It's gonna cause too much difficulties in the neighborhood.
You need to follow the condition or the criteria in the zoning ordinance. There's those 3 factors that must be reviewed again. I don't know if you want me to read through those again.
No.
But you have to find in the negative on those 3 items. Or yes, you would be open to litigation. Not saying you would necessarily be litigated against, but you would not put yourself in a great position for that.
And there was no conditions on the sale of the land?
Say that again.
There was no conditions on the deed of the sale of the land to what can happen?
Applicant already owns that property. And it's a single-family zoned home, so as long as they meet the setbacks and have single-family home built there. Again, we don't require basements to be finished by the zoning ordinance. That would go for stick-built or moved in. We do not require a garage on any home in the city of New Prague. Again, these are things that could be open for debate for changing in our ordinance, but we currently do not have them as minimum requirements.
And we'd still be subject to being in jeopardy of entering into a lawsuit.
Okay, any other questions?
I just have one. Has the owner of the property mentioned any reason for wanting to move a house onto it?
The applicant, Mr. Seiler, that owns the lot, is here if
Oh.
you'd like to hear from him.
Hi. Would you, you don't have to answer the question if you don't want to. I was just curious if there was some, positive intent. Okay. I understand I just didn't know if it was going to be owner occupied or rental property. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak?
Hi, I'm Nancy Zender. I live on 309 Second Street. I have a couple of questions. One, question on why they're using assessor values on these homes. The thing that is important to us, if I was to sell my home, is the real estate value. And a house like this being brought in or built next door, if that has an impact on how I sell my house, those are the dollars that are important to me. Assessors' tax values completely different. So my question is, why are we using those values? If you look across our neighborhood, initially they brought in 3 or 4 or 5 homes and the value of those homes by the assessor. But they sent this out to a neighborhood of quite a few other homes, but they didn't use the valuation of those homes. So I say, why are we looking at such a narrow window and why are we using at the assessor's values?
Ken?
Yeah, appraised value, why don't we go by appraised value?
The reason we use the assessor's value is because it's a uniform method that they use to look at property values, where we get our property taxes from the city of New Prague and all the other properties throughout the county and other cities as well. They do take a look at other values of homes. They look at qualified sales. They look at, they won't include unqualified sales, for example. Whether it be arm's length transaction from a relative to another one, they would include that in their value. But there's a whole program they use to look at these values of the homes that does take into consideration the market, but they are a little behind. It takes them, a couple of years to catch up on that. So that's why we use that, because it's a common information that we're using throughout to evaluate that. The market is up, certainly even from these values you're seeing here. These were assessed values 2020, payable 2021, for example. Values have continued to creep up since that point. And, I don't know how much higher things can go, but, based on the information from Michael Thompson and I believe he's a very knowledgeable individual. This is his role in the county, and he's determined in his professional opinion that the home value, once it's moved onto the lot with the improvements made, would not negatively or positively impact the other adjacent properties in this area. Regarding going into a larger area, and the council has this in the packet, but there was kind of a map that Mr. Thompson had put together in the supplementary information that was color-coded to address Ms. Ender's commentary on why didn't we use a larger area. So I don't know if I can put that up. I don't have the report loaded up, but it kind of showed an area in blue. That's considered the neighborhood for the values. I don't know if you can kind of see this. It's on page 3 of the supplemental information. But that's the area that they're comparing it to, is all the homes in blue there. So it's a much wider area than, just the block that we were looking at for values that he included in the table. So you've got it's the original Phillips edition plat to New Prague for the most part. Homes vary widely in age, condition, and, their layout in this area, but that's the neighborhood that was used for the value comparison. So, yeah, I understand the concern as far as, what a realtor might think it would be used for, but, we're looking at tax values here ultimately. And that's what our zoning ordinance is looking at, tax values, and if it's being impaired, substantially impaired. That's the criteria we're looking at here. Agree with it or not, that's what we do currently have in our zoning ordinance. These criteria were developed back in 2010. We had a number of moved-in homes prior to that. And there was not a huge review criteria by that point. So these were developed to help address these concerns specifically, and I think they do, and I think they have. I would challenge anybody to take a look at, there's about a dozen moved-in homes since I've been in New Prague, and going back to 2004. I think you'd have a really hard time finding any of them, picking them out of the city just by looking at them. And they have contributed quite well to our city. They didn't all turn out to be rentals. Some of them were, some of them sold, some have continued to be improved. And they have not proven to be a detriment to values in the neighborhoods that they've been moved into.
And I would challenge that to the point that we're not talking about all moved-in homes. We're talking about this moved-in home and the appearance of this moved-in home and the value of this moved home. It's already almost 100 years old. You're going to rattle it down the street for 30 miles, and then it has to be put together by someone who's not a licensed contractor. He has no experience with this. It's nothing against Mr. Saylor, but it does leave some questions in terms of where's the responsibility and who's going to be doing what on this. I know there's been discussions where he's mentioned his kids are going to help with issues on this house. They're not licensed contractors either. So one of the questions I have is, why are we even here? I was one of the residents that called Prior Lake. They say this house is not available to be moved. They don't know when it will be available to be moved. There is no proposal in place. There is no activity in place. It could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 2 years. They are looking at a large redevelopment plan. And when mentioned about moving this house, they said this house will go, their plan was to demolish the house, so that speaks to some of the value of this house. They would have someone move it at no cost. So if it's Mr. Saylor or someone else, they're not paying anything for this house. There's no dollar value. So this is a low-cost method of bringing this house into the neighborhood. I want something that brings value to the neighborhood, not just a cheap fix on this property. And if we don't know when anything can be moved, if it can be moved, or if it'll be demolished, why are we even here? Is this a waste of our time? Why can't we visit this when we know that this has been secured? Prior Lake didn't even know who Mr. Saylor was. So
That's not true.
well, that's what they reported to us. They were not familiar with who it
I
was.
spoke with Casey McCabe, the Community Development Director, this morning. It is not public information to be disclosed because they do not have a written agreement at this point.
Well, that's not what was relayed to me. They said they were not familiar with that name and that they did not have anyone that was planning on moving the house. There had been some discussions, but nothing was done, nothing was locked down. So I just feel like there are so many loose ends on this, and it's being brought to you to make a decision on lots of loose ends with a neighborhood that wants nothing to do with this because it does not fit in. It's a great house, as Terry said, for a cabin out in the woods someplace. This does not fit the structure and the feeling of the neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to address the council? Okay. Any other discussion of the council?
Yes, before I go make the motion, Nancy, Trevor, Terry, it's not that I don't, agree with you. However, I just don't see why the city should put themselves in jeopardy to get sued, over this issue. I don't see a way out of, I don't see a way to say no without getting sued. It would be nice if all four of you could get together and, I don't know if there's a way that you can do some landscaping or something like that to make your your neighbors a little more, comfortable with this. But there's nothing wrong with communicating, all four of you. Like I say, that is a better solution than all of us ending up in court. So I'm gonna make the motion to approve.
There's been a motion made by Rick. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Bruce made the second. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to comment, I certainly feel for your, and empathize with your concerns and size and value. But it's also very true that you can turn around and build the exact same looking building. So size and some of these issues would be the same regardless. And oftentimes, my history in planning and zoning for many years, you run into this situation, you don't like the property that's next door. You don't, as long as it fulfills the requirements of the ordinance, that's what you live with as a neighbor. So I definitely empathize, but I don't feel that we have a lot of latitude to make any other decision than what we are voting for. So that's my reasoning for it. Not that I don't believe in your concerns. I do think that staff and planning and zoning have put a very good effort in trying to meet your concerns. And my concern about making sure that it's done according to the normal requirements and is done in a timely manner, I think that there's ways we can monitor that. So to the best of the city's ability, I think we're going to be trying to make sure we have a suitable property there, and that's my reasoning behind it.
Thank you, Bruce, and I concur with what Bruce said. It is a very difficult situation for all involved, and I also empathize as a property owner of not wanting something that you may think is not going to benefit property value or be aesthetically pleasing. I can only ask of the eventual owner of the house, if that sale goes through with the city of Prior Lake, that everyone just try to be a good neighbor and keep everything looking aesthetically pleasing and clean and neat, and not let it, and, you know, because it also gives the picture of New Prague as not being a very nice place to live if there's a lot of dilapidated or uncared for homes in the community. So again, I empathize with your situation, but to voice that we have to do what our ordinances say that we do until such time that they get to a point where we think they need to be changed. Thank you.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. That was me.
I'm sorry?
That was me. I'm opposed. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Okay, update for the city administrator interviews.
Yeah, Liza's not here tonight. She's
Yep.
she's not connecting in, that,
If you guys can take the conversation out, we're gonna carry on the meeting. Thanks. Go ahead, Mike.
the
Sorry.
next is just reaffirm what's going to be occurring next week with Liza Donabauer of DDA as it relates to assisting the council and the staff with the proposed interview schedule for the 3 candidates that are coming in next Monday and Tuesday to interview with you. There's, and you should all receive the schedule from Liza, I believe, last week by email, that there's a group tour with staff scheduled for Monday afternoon. We've got a bus and it'll take about 75 minutes. Ken is going to lead that. The community meet and greet has been set up from 4 to 6 over at the golf course. And then Liza will attempt to gather feedback and provide that to you on Tuesday. In the morning on Tuesday is the meeting and interaction between the 3 candidates and city staff from about 9 to 10. A brief break, and then there will be individual 20-minute interviews with all of you that will be putting you together in groups of 2, except Dwayne Mayor Jerick will be on his own. Those are 20 minutes, and the candidates will move through that. Then there's lunch between the council and the finalists, and then a brief orientation with Liza at 12:45, and then the 45-minute individual interviews starting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then at the conclusion, you'll have deliberation and decision-making and selection at that time. So per your request, all of your activity was kept to Tuesday, the 29th. Monday was optional if you wanted to attend the meet and greet. If you wanted to just happen to stop over, it'll be at the golf course. And then on the group tour, we do have room, but we weren't expecting anybody to partake in that, although I believe Councilmember Seiler may be interested that we were able to acquire a handicapped accessible bus so that Rick could go along if he so chose.
And that is next Tuesday at 2:15, be here.
No, that's on Monday.
Monday, 2:15.
Yeah. If you remember, I called on Friday and scheduled that with you.
Yeah, I don't have a calendar right in front of me, no mind.
Okay, but that's on Monday.
Gotcha.
And we leave promptly at 2:15, so if you're not here, the bus will leave.
I'll chase it. Probably beat it.
We could probably put a hook on the back of the bus and
Yeah,
hook
there
it
you
up
go.
to your electric wheelchair.
Told
And
me there.
hopefully you can keep up well enough with that, but
Pretty funny, Mike.
you should have this scheduled already from Liza, so you kind of know what's scheduled, and so.
Now, she asked about general questions, if I remember right.
Right,
If somebody has one, get them off to her.
yeah, I've already sent mine in.
Have you? Okay, I'm still formulating mine.
Oh, interview questions.
Yeah, general interview questions, if you have some that you'd like asked, then get them off to her.
And
She'd
then is she
appreciate
also
it.
gonna prepare a pre-made list of questions for us again?
And that's what'll be on there. So if you have a specific style of question or specific question you wanna answer, get it off to her.
Have her check it out to make sure it's legal, right?
Yep, well, and then she'll put it in there. Yep.
Okay.
I think her plan was to put in a certain number, so yeah, so.
Yeah, we aren't gonna, but I think.
Poor
she
guy,
just-
you know, because we have a lot to get through in 20 minutes.
So.
So
okay.
the individual meeting rooms will obviously be the break room upstairs here, the conference room downstairs, and then we've got a room over on the PD side of things, Dwayne, which is where we'll put you over on that. So Barb will be coordinating that on our end, working with the staff to make sure, working with Liza to make sure the timelines are met. Lunch will be up here, and then the final interviews in the afternoon will be up here as we'll move all of this stuff and just have a table for the candidate to sit at out in here. So all of those changes will be made and are ready to go.
Great.
And Mike, I haven't been through this before, so is the final deliberation all public, or is this qualify under the state laws for a closed door for deliberation on the
No,
finals?
there is no abilities to go into a closed session, so we will have to post this as an open meeting for next Tuesday in the afternoon, beginning from lunch on.
So we should try to adopt some hand signals or some facial expressions or something.
Yeah, are you good at winking?
About the only thing we could try to do would be to ask Patrick to sit out in the next room till you were all done, but, you know, that's the press's abilities to take a look at that, or anybody else from the public that would want to happen to come into that.
And the candidates are normally there during the deliberation.
No. That after you finish the interviews, the candidates will be excused and likely headed home, or I don't know what Liza's interaction with them, but based on historical, having gone through this process a number of times, normally candidates just leave and head back to their home, and then they're contacted by Liza following your deliberations.
But they could just watch on their phone in the parking lot for that matter.
Well, the meeting will not be videotaped.
Okay.
So we're not gonna be putting it on the screen. It'll just be the interview with the council.
So we could call, someone could call Patrick then.
What is your plan?
Call him away.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I've already checked with the city attorney, but there is no provision under the statutes to close any part of the discussions or deliberations.
I didn't know because certain employment issues are closed.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know that.
This is not one that is eligible under that criteria.
Thank you.
In many cities, there, historically, and whether that's the same currently, it's been a few years since I've been through this process, and so in a number of the different cities that I've worked in, I know that, you know, there was a discussion between the city and the news media, and they voluntarily chose to leave the council do their business and not sit in and not necessarily report that, but that was a choice by the news media and was up to them on whether they did that, so.
Okay, great, thank you, Mike. Consent agenda, we're on to that, and, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
And Bruce made the second, Maggie made the motion. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I see we have some people in the audience. Do you want to address the council, or?
No, I think we're okay. We were just hanging out here to meet you guys, see you guys.
Now, who are you, if I can ask? Come on up.
My name is Owen Schultz. I'm in Montgomery, 1105 Sunset Boulevard, Northwest. I am one of the, gonna be one of the new owners of Checkers Bar.
Okay.
That we've got a purchase agreement all set up. Just kind of waiting on all the details going through. Applied for liquor license and working on the gambling, and that was going through today to submit to a public hearing for the next one.
Yep.
Which hopefully we all get approved and.
Yep.
You already did.
Yep.
No, we okayed the public hearing.
Public hearing, yeah.
Yep. So, just wanted to stop in, see faces, and see who all we're gonna be working with.
So tell me what you're gonna have there. What's
we-
your idea?
Well, we plan on turning it into a restaurant. So currently a bar. We plan on working with some contractors to do some construction to build out a commercial kitchen. We're leading towards a wood fire grill. Plan on bringing a really nice wood fire oven in, Napoleon style. Doing some pizzas and a few other things. My other brother that's not here tonight is the chef. This is gonna be a family establishment. I've got my older brother, my mother behind us. We're all kind of in on it. Between my other brother, fun fact, he's a twin brother.
Okay.
He's the chef, and I'll be kind of the front of the house, the liquor side of things and guest side of things. But he's been in the business and doing lots of things since he was 18 years old. I've been in the business since I was 18, took a break for a while, came back. Currently manage some restaurants. So we thought it'd be kind of fun.
Is that what you're managing?
Yep, Charlie's on Pryor.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been there since the building opened up and began, and he actually was the chef there for a while too, for a couple of years, and then moved on to a different endeavor. And now we kind of wanted to start our own thing. Just this popped up, good opportunity. Checked it out, we liked it. Thought of something great that we can do with it, and make it a community based right off of Main Street with a new development. We have some ideas that I think will go a long way.
Good.
Well, I'm excited for you.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun for us. We'll see where it takes us, and hopefully there's more things down the road.
Cool.
That's great. That is very exciting. That's-
Definitely want to send a thanks out. Appreciate you guys have all been very awesome to work with. We've reached out. I've reached out to many people. Barb, Ken, and everybody's just been happy to work with us. Very, very nice about it. Very productive. We also threw some other things on the belt that went really fast paced. One of them was the change order on the construction, doing the main pipe. I mean, you guys all handled that very well, and we were excited to get that in to help improve fire suppression, sprinkler systems, and also water going into the kitchen for sinks and dishwashers and, you know, everything like that. So definitely appreciate it.
Good,
Thank you.
thank you.
Looking forward to working with all you guys
Yeah.
at some point.
Now, does your twin brother look like you?
We're identical.
Beard and everything?
Yep, beard and everything. He's slimmer than I am. I got about 40 pounds on him. It just shows that's why I work the beer and
Yeah, I was gonna say.
my beer. He sticks with the low calorie stuff. So
Okay.
but yeah, we're a fun group. I live in Montgomery. I'm down the road. We grew up in Savage.
Okay.
My mom still currently lives in Savage, so we know the area.
Yep.
So we're excited.
What is your ETA of opening?
Well, we're shooting for August 2nd on closing date, and we don't plan on closing. We plan on operating it the way it is, closing off, an area where we can do the kitchen work with not bothering people, and we'll see how long that takes. Hopefully only a month or two quicker if possible. I think a lot of the guys that I've lined up for some of the contracting, I know, or Rich and Rod have been helping us out that they know, and they've all said that they're available to start pretty soon.
Just so the state doesn't shut down and throw your
building
your
permits.
Department of Health plan into chaos.
Yeah, so we'll have to work with them, and so hopefully it's not too long of a timeline, but one of our goals was to have an up and running kitchen, everything by Dozinki Days.
Okay.
Kind of people out on the street serving food and doing something fun, maybe in the back parking lot or something that to be able to show people, what we got going and how we're going with it. So
Wonderful. Well,
yeah,
Thanks for attending.
yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go around the horn here. Maggie.
I don't have anything. Oh, wait, just a second. I do have something. I was approached by a person by the parking of semi-trailers in the city. Specifically, there's one next door to me. The cab is parked in the driveway, and that individual has been visited by our police officers. And there are other trucks that are parking over by Ace Hardware. And the question coming up is, this is a kind of a temporary situation for this season. What happens in the winter when you can't park overnight? And is there any designated parking in the city? At one point in time where the construction debris has been, we've seen trucks parked there. And evidently there's someplace up near the industrial park that they can also park, but I'm not sure if that's off-street. So I just wasn't sure if there's anything that the city has available that could be used to designate. Obviously, if it's city-owned property, there could be some liability issue if there were, damage to the vehicle. Other than that, it's the gentleman that's coming in to build the storage area over by Chart, and that would be a charge for the truck drivers to overnight their trucks there. But it was just a question that somebody asked me because they're seeing it as coming up as an issue.
I see that a lot because I live in that area.
Sure.
And now they're migrating a little bit even further to Quick Trip.
Yeah, and
there.
that cul-de-sac.
So I don't know what, I imagine that's all legal. And there's some, but I'm curious, where did they park before they were parking there?
In that lot
In what lot?
that we have all the debris.
Oh, they were parking in the mill lot?
Yeah, behind
Some
Flipside.
of them were over there or on Second Avenue.
So they were unauthorized parking.
Yeah, a lot of them parked in that parking lot, or that big lot that we have, but that was owned by the mill
Yeah.
at the time, and they got permission from the mill to park in there.
No, the city owned it and rented it to the mill.
Yes.
But because the mill leased it,
They
Right.
had-
we told them they had to get permission from them.
Right. And now it's this, now there's nobody but the city, right?
Yeah.
We're not leased out to anyone.
Correct.
But they're using it for the construction.
So,
But that's authorized.
Can't we as a council request that you guys, reevaluate it and then change the ordinance that says no, semis, allowed parking on the, city streets?
Ken had emailed me last week about looking at, taking away some of those zoning areas that we allow it by our ordinance, and we can take a look at that. I have gotten several complaints about those on First Street there, just causing an issue with, when they're coming out of the clinic or Ace Hardware. The brewery there also, that it's just
the sight line,
semis encumber the vision
Right.
as they access out. Part of that is it's a collector road, and as we build out and expand, there's gonna be more traffic and more of those that you just can't slow and go around the corner or out onto the street. So part of that is there, but I know when I read Ken's, email and looked at it, a thought that we would have to exercise with is it appropriate for a semi to park on any street? Is there any reason for that other than
for
designated
delivery.
deliveries, unloading and, or loading or offloading? It's appropriate for that, but is it appropriate for them just to park on a street? Is it necessary?
It wouldn't be so bad if there's getting to be more of them.
Yep.
Like when you have 5 on that one block area or 1.5, and it's not all semis, there's a truck too, but
There's a mail truck.
it's just, there never used to be that many at one spot.
And I think part of that is the owner of the 2 semis anyways, he lives in that area, so he's able to park it closer to where he lives.
Yeah, if it's legal, I guess I don't have an issue with it, but I do think we would have to
We do keep
be mindful of the safety issue, because there may be a safety issue with some of that.
And we could look at if we have to designate a certain distance from those access points.
Or could we just put designated areas that they could park? I mean, I don't wanna cut them off, they live here in the city too. But our situation over here would be with the same residents that just left. I mean, they gotta sit and look at that all the time too. There's always semis up and down by my house.
Yeah, no, and some of the residents that left have complained for years of trucks idling in there when the mill utilized it. We would get called all the time about trucks idling there in the middle of winter and them smelling the fumes from it
Yep,
in the
yep.
summer.
Yeah.
So it's always a concern, but yeah, it'd be great if we had an area that we could get them to,
Well,
wrap that
We will when
Yes.
that,
when it's done.
When
when it's done, up by, Radon up there.
So I had one of the truckers over there ask me, and I told him about that. And he drives for somebody, and he says, I mean, I think a lot of those companies are used to paying
Yeah.
for a spot within a community for them to park their truck.
Yep.
It's not, when I told him that, it wasn't, yeah, I'll tell the owner. And it was like, well, do it all the time,
That's
you
not
know?
unusual.
Huh?
It's not unusual.
Yeah, and oh, okay, you know,
Yep.
I didn't know, you know, but I didn't know, I couldn't tell him when it was gonna be done, but he was interested. So,
Yeah, well, the person that's gonna do it, that they'll be offering electricity at those spots, so, yeah.
that's probably more than they have parking on the street,
Yeah, absolutely.
so. Okay, anything else, Maggie?
No, thank you.
I just have one quick thing, I had the chance to meet the deputy consul of the Czech Republic last week and had lunch with him in Montgomery. His name is, Jan Kabista. And he's gonna be rotated back to, well, actually the embassy in Berlin, but he's been in the consulate in Chicago for the last 4 years. And Patrick was there that day and he took a tour around New Prague and then they went over to Montgomery. They took a tour around there and kind of toured the Minnesota Czech country. So we do have the consulates come up here every so often. So there'll be a new one coming after July, I understand. So we'll hopefully get that one up here too. So that was kind of a neat mayor thing to do. Nice. That's all I have. Bruce?
I got a few things, I'll make it quick. Cybersecurity's been in the news, I'm just wondering, do we do annual employee training for phishing and password security and all that?
We are continuing to, I know, Utilities Department does have some programs they're doing right now. One of the things we've had from CTS, our IT firm, is suggesting that we formally budget for, risk management for cybersecurity, and that would be an item we would need to budget for 2022 and beyond, kind of to continue to do it annually. So it's on our radar very much. At this point, we don't have a huge risk, but going forward, yes, as we continue to move more things online, yeah, that's very important.
Do they have any kind of just basic webinar or something that just deals with phishing and password security and just the minimal things that we can at least establish in annual?
Yeah, so you can do what they're looking at, proposing to have us do is some webinars that staff can look at on a annual basis or whatever, but then also have active phishing.
Yep.
We'll just call it, they're testing you
Yep.
as an employee to see if you open a phony email. And so that's the part we don't have at this point, but I think there is value in that because you can actually see from an internal audit standpoint if you're opening yourself to that liability without actually incurring the liabilities.
Yeah, and that's what I'm familiar with. We've
Yep.
been doing, many places have been doing that for many years.
Yep.
So I would encourage and suggest the council to consider that
Yep.
sooner
There are
than
some of us
later.
on a smaller scale that have been doing it. I've been doing it for the last 3 years through the utilities, as offered through SIMPA.
Yep.
So there are some city employees that do. I don't know how, that's majority of us or some of us. I've been doing that for quite a while.
Yeah, I think the basic level of a webinar that you can kind of learn about it, and then the second, the higher tier, what you're referring to, Ken, is actually a report that presented to the city council with the findings.
Yep.
And that is where you will, not necessarily you'll catch people, but at least to further educate someone to that, see if they actually are understanding it. And it's certainly become much more important. And I imagine we were going to the additional level then with the utilities and billing systems that the vendors we use.
They are required to meet all of those currently, and that's the nice thing about a lot of our billing vendors is they hold the credit card information and store that, so we're not, storing it locally. So we don't have that issue, but, there's certainly other things we could be doing, dog licenses and picnic shelters and all that through an online portal, and we currently don't, so kind of depends on where we want to go with a lot of that. If you end up opening yourself to that exposure, but then we would want to make sure that we're training for it too.
And normally what we would ask then for those vendors that they provide us with their audit showing that they're in compliance with all the security measures.
Correct.
To make sure that those customer information is being
Yep.
properly secured. And that's something we can ask for now at any time.
Yep, and I believe
do that.
Jim, that had something to do with the PCI compliance, if I'm not mistaken. Jim, you and Patty, I think, dealt with that mostly with CTS, from what I heard.
Yeah, we're still working on our policies, PCI compliance about keeping, card numbers and things. Putting that in place.
Okay. Well, we're not gonna get our power grid taken down or anything, but you never think it's gonna happen, then it happens. Change gears, Mike commented on the city administrator getting some attention because of credit card use. I just, not our city administrator. No, I wouldn't even mention that. But it did remind me, is that being reviewed in our audit? And I guess I can ask Patty that unless you know, do we do spot checks of?
It is, the auditors do.
All right. And then a resident asked me about, this was brought up because of the dog survey or dog park survey, but they got into asking me about the demolition of the swimming pools. I'm not sure, is that on our radar, the planning, at least the planning stage is the demolition of the swimming pool? I know we talked about in the capital plan last year, but has anything been started with that project? Or?
One of the things Patty asked me to, when it comes around to me, is trying to see in preparations for staff putting together the preliminary 2022 budget is a working discussion with council on capital and special projects as far as questions, issues, or concerns that we want to make sure are potentially included and able to be costed out. So I've got that on my list to talk to you about so that we can take a look at it as we attempt to put together the preliminary budget and the preliminary property tax levy for this next year. Are there any items or issues that the council has on their mind that they want us to take a look at so that we can get those included in the draft of that preliminary budget? So the question you have on the swimming pool, that no, the council hasn't had any further follow-up or discussion on necessarily the staging or scheduling of doing any demolition of the swimming pool. So that would obviously be one of those things that, you know, is that something that you want us to consider so that we can get cost estimates and get that included if that's something you want in next year's budget or what have you, so.
Yeah, we talked about it last year, and it was included in the capital campaign, capital plan last year, so, and I don't know what it was thought of, is it for this year or next year, or, I know we talked about the armory first. And I don't understand if we need, if the thinking when we talked about it last time was that we need to kind of develop the plan of what it's gonna be used for before we demolish it, or are we just gonna be demolishing it first? And that's what my understanding was, we're gonna be demolishing it before we know exactly what it might be used for in the future. So the armory came under budget, so I thought that maybe we could start planning for that this year already. So that, I guess that's what I'm asking. Do we have an appetite, or do we have the ability even to work on a project like that this year yet?
This year, I would say no.
Okay.
Based on trying to finish and get everything done with this. So if there was some consideration, it would need to occur probably in the 2022 budget.
But you feel also, Matt?
Absolutely, yeah. Main Street is all hands on deck.
Okay.
More than we ever expected it would be, and we also have so many other projects. I know Glenn has always talked about that in the past, doing a demo, depending on what the council has decided. And I don't even think he came up with a dollar amount yet when he was the director. I would have to check past files, but that's something I can get done pretty quickly with I got all the budget information today from Patty, so that is something that we will be discussing.
Okay, yeah, it's been talked about for over 3 years now since I've been.
But there hasn't been any end uses either determined what should go in and, you know, so does it need to be demolished just so it can sit there? Or is there some proposed plan or something that you would want to take a look at? And, you know, there've been a number of groups that have spoken or different options that have been talked about, you know, what could be done on that site. And so, you know, the council hasn't really flushed that issue out to really go any further with either part of that.
Yeah, my motivation, as I said last year, is to reduce the $3,000 or so we're paying on yearly interest, that the carrying costs that we don't need to have was my motivation on that.
But in that, you'll have to answer the question is, do you keep that building structure? Or do you demo that structure as well, along with the pool, or, you know, just what goes into that? And, you know, there's been talk about some type of the
Splash pad.
the splash pad, or the baseball group is interested in other features in that. And so you're gonna have multiple uses and taking a look at that. So, you know, you can start with demolition, but, you know, the question is how soon behind that are you gonna come up with something? Because part of that, if you do demolition and you don't have an end use, then we've gotta determine about what kind of, covering that we've gotta deal with over the top of that if it's just simply demolished. And, you know, the last thing we want is just a gravel lot sitting there with a bunch of weeds in it, so.
I guess that's why I asked that question just a couple minutes ago. Do we need to have that plan in place before we talk about that? Or are we gonna be talking about just demolishing it without knowing it, what the future use is? Because if we're talking about the future use, we can already start the park board or someone looking at future uses before we actually start bidding out anything. So I'm just trying to keep the motivation moving forward.
But that policy direction and discussion is gonna have to come from the council to begin with.
Okay.
The last item I just wanted to ask about then, and I know you guys are familiar with, but the American Rescue Plan Act, and I'm sure you guys, Patty's been working on that. But do we need a resolution to apply for a grant, or Do we need to do any activity to start that process? And I'm sure you guys have started the process. I know you started the process.
No, there's nothing that we have to do to apply for anything that, we just had a Scott County City Managers Group today talking about, you know, people trying to understand what are all of the potential uses under the new law that those funds can be used for, and making sure that we have all of that from the feds, to us, that we're all trying to take a look at. In our end is, we've sat through, webinars with, the league and, I believe some others, trying to understand all of the particulars related to that law. I think the funding that's due us is about $904,000 ultimately. Funds have to be able to be obligated by December 31st of 2024 and then spent, completely, by December 31 of 2026. And so, in taking a look at it, we've been trying to make sure we can understand that, and then to try to begin to identify a process is how do we go about determining what kind of potential projects, you know, can we, as we take a look at those criteria and requirements, what kind of projects can we as staff, you know, put together as far as a list, and then begin to have dialogue with the council to see what the council's reaction are to some of those and or anything else that, that you might have. And then is there a third, a way to be able to reach out to, the public or the community and see if they've got any other thoughts or ideas. So the money doesn't have to be spent by the end of this, this year or anything. So we're trying to take a look at, the eligibility criteria and the uses, and then begin to do some brainstorming internally. And obviously, we're gonna be going through a transition here with, you know, the new administrator coming on board and me leaving, and that likely will have to be one of the things on the table that, based on the fact that you're down to 3, will have to, obviously work on with the staff and the council in the coming months.
I understood, I attended one of those webinars as well, that we have to apply for it, through the state of Minnesota, which we'll be doing it.
We had to submit certain information to make sure we were eligible to be able to receive the funds. The state has 60 days upon their receipt of the monies from the feds to kick out the first half to us, and then the other half will come, a year from then.
So we actually did make the application?
No, there wasn't an application, there was certain information that we had to have in, to ensure that we were eligible to be able to receive the monies.
Yeah, they
But
refer
there
to it
was
as.
not an application.
They use the word apply, and it's a form online that you had to fill out, and you had to test to and certify to it and submit your budget numbers and things to it, so.
No.
And it's due by July 1st is an important date for some reason, that's why I bring it up, but.
No, we've been, monitoring those requirements, and we believe we're in a position to, receive the first half funding that comes from the state, and we've submitted, the necessary information that we're supposed to have on file with the state, and that's been done.
Okay. Great, I hadn't heard that, so that's why I asked.
Rick? No, I've talked too much tonight.
Ken?
I do not have anything more.
Matt?
The only thing I was gonna bring up is, I got a few calls today from residents, questioning the seal coating, when all the rock's gonna get cleaned up.
Okay,
We had the biggest project we've ever had when it comes to seal coating, almost double the size we normally did. So it actually took them almost 3 days to, complete putting the emulsion down in rock. They started the sweep up on Friday and they should finish up tomorrow. But it has been a long process and residents are wondering when is the street gonna get back to the way it should be? So if any of you guys have got calls, like I said, I received 3 or 4 today, so it is in the process.
yep. And I've seen that, and it's like,
And they've all understood, once you explain them, it was a big project, it's taking twice as long as it normally does, but
years ago, they used to leave the stuff down for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was a lot dustier than it is now.
when I first
but-
started, it was
Yes,
3 weeks and a lot more rock they used to put down.
yes,
So,
so,
and then 11th Avenue, First Street out by Raven Stream, those areas will get restriped because that was part of the seal coating
oh,
process.
it was,
Yep,
okay.
So, that's all I got.
Jim? Mike?
Patty asked me to take a look at if the council, if you could, look at your calendars and see if, and she just left it on my desk this afternoon, looking ahead to, August, that week in between, the, 5th and 19th is, and she was asking, if I get into the right month here, whether something in that second week, that she could, lead, discussions with the council and taking a look at discussion on capital and special projects, just to make sure that, any questions or issues, that the council has on their mind regarding that, that, she can have, between, the staff and the council to make sure that we can incorporate that or get that into the budget draft work, so that when we bring the preliminary levy, in September, that at least we can attempt to, see whether we've got funding that we can include, or you'll be able to see what the look is to, accomplish some of those. And so she was asking about either August 11th or 12th, in there.
What days of?
That's a Wednesday and a Thursday.
Yeah, Wednesday won't work for me.
And I'm gonna have to look at a calendar at home because.
Yeah, I have to look at my work calendar too.
I can send out an email asking those dates,
Okay.
which days, maybe that week works best, and we can try to take a look at that and, try to get that firmed up as to which date looks good, and maybe, solicit feedback from you next Tuesday, or we can send it out to the council. This is what we've heard. Can you make that date work? Cause we've got 4 out of 5 or.
Yeah.
Or whatnot, on that planning date.
Okay, that sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Also note that I am on vacation next week. I will be available for Tuesday for our interviews. Otherwise, I'm out of pocket unless there's an emergency.
I don't blame you. You gotta take time. Okay,
And then the other one, I hadn't got noticed, but Sean's not here tonight, but he asked me to pass on to you, is that apparently the fire department is having their annual fish fry next Tuesday, or excuse me, not Tuesday, but July 6th, which will be after the council meeting, so just a reminder on that.
okay.
Otherwise, that's all I have.
I do have one more fire to put out too. As far as I tried to remember what exactly took place and what was said, but I don't believe we have any intentions of taking down the parapet. So it was just a question that one of the council people had put out there, and for some reason, some people thought that we were actually thinking about taking that, changing the architectural look of the building, and that's not what's happening, correct?
No, the discussion we had is that has to come down because the cement in between the different blocks, of the limestone that was there.
So actually, when they were doing test holes last week, one of the limestone, pieces of the fascia fell off, so that pretty much is what we feared would happen, but luckily we had all the secure, scaffolding up around there, but yeah, it's taken down as of today, and they're gonna rebuild it as it looked before. So we'll get rid of that safety concern with the brick and the limestone that was up there.
And we're not gonna change the architectural look of the building at all?
No,
We are not.
you won't notice the half or quarter inch difference in the, I forget what the, top plate or whatever is gonna be. The cap will be slightly different, but you will not notice that from, just the general public, but that needed to be done to better seal that off for, keeping any other future issues from happening up there, but.
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
For probably about 2 months for them to get the material they need, so.
I'm sure the people that asked me understand, but, I just wanted to make sure that was clear to everybody, that we have no intention on changing the architectural look of this building.
No, that was the direction of the council when you approved.
Right,
entering
I know it,
into
I
doing
just wanted to
that,
make it public, all right?
But I mean, that was a decision by the council that night.
Right,
That's how much I pay attention to it. I didn't even notice it.
Yeah, it's not there currently.
No, I think Maggie was the one that raised the question, as I
Yeah.
recall.
Yeah, but she asked a simple question, can we remove it? And we said no, so it was good.
God. Okay. All right. Anything else, Mike?
No.
Otherwise, I take a motion to adjourn. So move. Second?
Go ahead, Rick.
No, go ahead.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then we have the closed